welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a super special project. We're going to be working with the remains of one of my client's family members, and she specifically requested to do it with one of my sunflowers. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting it in my base of the sunflower, and I'm going to show you how I do it right now. So I've already gone ahead and cut out everything that I'm going to be needing. I got my stem, I got my little branches here that go to my leaves that I'm going to be dremeling in the design of the pattern of the leaves. And then this is my center right here that I'm gonna weld together, and then I'll press it through one of my little invention things that I have to dome it out. And then these are my two petals that I will put creases in each one of them and then bend it back. And then finally, I have my base right here, which is my 1" 3/16 round bar. And this is 16 gauge metal, because I like to have it a little bit thicker so it supports the sunflower, and also so it makes it so I don't like blow through it, because the rest of my metal that I use is 22 gauge and that's easier to blow through. So I just like the 16 gauge with the 3/16. So I've done my top and my bottom. So what I'm going to be doing different this time, because I'm trying to be as respectful as possible with this, I will weld one side completely on, have it completely ground down, flushed out, and then I'm going to let it sit, let it cool, and then I'll put the remains in here, and then I will slowly weld on the top. So I'll maybe do like 2 or 3 tacks at a time, because I don't want it to get too hot, because we're just putting it in there like it was in the little velvet bag. So I don't want it to get hot and burn and have a weird smell to it. And also just to be respectful as possible with this. So now that we have the bottom of our base welded on, I'm gonna let that sit and cool. We're gonna move on to putting our creases into each of the petals right here. And I'm gonna show you. Okay, so here is the bottom part that has been completely welded on and cleaned up. And now I'm going to be doing it like we discussed earlier, just a little bit different than I normally do. And I'm going to be placing the remains of my client's relative in here. Okay, so that's where we want to stop right there after our 2 tacks. I'm going to let this cool completely, and then I'll come back, do 2 more, and I'm just going to keep alternating to keep my heat away from each other so that it will like kind of cool itself down. So while this is cooling, I'm going to be hopping back over to the sunflower and completing the different steps that I do with it normally. So, and as I finish with a little bit, then I'll hop back over here. As I notice it cools back down, I'll do 2 more, because this is probably going to take me several hours to just get it welded up, and then so many more hours just to grind it down flush. And so, because our grinder is also going to be a concern as for heating it up too much. So we also want to be respectful in that way. So it's just going to be completing the rest of the sunflower build until we are ready to weld onto the base. And that was our last tack. So now we have it all welded on. So the next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna let this cool down completely, and then I'm gonna start grinding on it slowly, doing the same thing, only doing just a little bit, and then we're gonna stop, clean up, stop. So my two metals right here, this one is a 22 gauge carbon steel punch plate. And you can see the little holes. I've gone ahead and clamped them together for my welding purposes. And then this top is a stainless steel woven. And what I'm going to be doing, this is a 16 gauge. So because it's two different metals, two different thicknesses, I just turn it at 16 gauge. And then I try to hit it where there's at least two stainless steel little strips coming together, and I hit it there, because if I don't and I hit it on other places, it'll just blow through. And then I mainly put my puddle on my stainless steel and then kind of work it over into my 22 gauge punch plate. Okay, so we have our center all cleaned up and ready to go, and now we are going to dome it out. So to do that, I use a coupling and a cap, screw-on cap, and it fits completely through the coupling, so that will give me enough space to keep my metal in between it and push it through. It's not going to go all the way through, but just enough to give it that nice dome part. So when I'm doing that, I'm going to make sure that my woven side here is toward my coupling. And I'm going to try to center this in my vise as close to possible. Then I will tighten it up. And then I'll make my adjustments before I fully start tightening down on it. Okay. I think we're gonna go with that. So now all I'm gonna do is just tighten it in. And you can, I don't know if you can see it right here, but when I pull it out, I'll show you. The reason why I tack is because you can see that there's a gap the two metals are trying to pull away from each other. So it's kind of going at an angle for me, so I'm going to readjust it. See, that's how it's starting to press. So you can kind of see where the metal pulled away from right there, because I didn't really have a spot for it to tack there. So in to make it sure that it didn't blow out there, I just don't tack. I only tack where two meet up. So I'm gonna adjust this. Start with this. I think that is gonna do it. And I usually have to get a hammer to get this other side out. So there we go. There, it's nice and domed out. So now what I do is take it, and if there's, like right here, that part's sticking up, I'll take my grinder and I'll knock it down so it's not sticking up too much. And then I will also, it's not perfectly flat, like we got high spot here. So when I go to lay it down on my sunflower, I want it as flat as possible so that I can make good welds all the way around it. So that's what I'm gonna do next. This part right here, I've gone ahead and adjusted my petals to where I think they overlap and look the best. And then I've made these two marks on here to show where I want the top of my sunflower to be. So I just keep that there so that when I flip it over and I do my tacks and I'm messing around with it, that I don't have to keep looking and trying to search for where was that spot at. So I just go ahead and put a mark on here so that way I know which is always my top, and it's just an easy reference that I always do. So now we are going to go ahead and flip this over and put a couple tacks on here. Okay, so I had to put a couple extra tacks on it because it was starting to blow out on me and I didn't want to lose it. So I built it up a little bit, and then I'm just going to go ahead and grind it back down. And then I will grind off all those little heat marks on this top side as well. Okay, so here is our head. It has been completely cleaned up. And now it's time to put our center on here and then adjust it to where we think it looks best. So, and it's different for each one. So it's all about just kind of playing with it and see how it comes together. Because this isn't completely flat. So sometimes you may have to adjust this base even more if it's not flat enough, or if one area sticks out a little bit too much. I think right there, that looks pretty good because we got not much wiggle. We got good contact points where we have our other tacks. Just gonna look from above just to make, yeah, I like that. So we are gonna go ahead and tack this on. I think that's good. I don't think we need let me do one more right here. Okay, so there we have it. Now we are going to be using the stem and the little branches off that's going to be attaching to my leaves. I'm going to be putting them in my vise and then hitting it with my hammer to give it some like rigid, rough curves, and just so that it's not straight anymore. So I'll show you how I do that now. Okay, so we just finished our stem. So it has a curve front to back, and it also has curves side to side. And then I do my stems that come off for my leaves, I do them differently for each one, so that my leaves are just as natural looking as they come, because they're not going to be exactly perfect and replicas of each other in nature. So because I can't get in these tight little areas right here to clean this out, I'm going to use, with my little die grinder, I'm going to use my little wire brush and get this cleaned up. So here it is cleaned up, ready to go, rounded edges. Next, we are going to be taking our stem of our sunflower and welding it on. And I always build it from the bottom up because I want to be able to get in here and clean around this base and make sure it's really good before I start adding the leaves, because the leaves will prevent me access from getting down here. So we're going to do that now. So I've already gone ahead and marked it. This is where my center is going to be, and this is going to be my front. So I'm going to go ahead and do my first tack, and we'll go from there. And from here, we're gonna do our adjustment. Do like a little test here to kind of see what we're looking at, to see if I need to adjust it anymore. Front to back, side to side. I think we're good front to back. Just want to make sure side to side. Yep, I think that's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put one more tack in the front, and then I'm going to let it sit and cool down before I finish welding. So it is now cooled down, so we're going to go ahead and do our last two welds. we're just gonna let that sit, cool down, and then we're gonna come back and then we'll clean it up. So while I was waiting for this to cool down, I went ahead and I cleaned up the leaves a little bit more, and then I took my Dremel and I redid the lines that were lost from when we tacked or welded this part on here. So I did that for both of them while we were waiting for the other part to cool down. So these are ready to go, and now we're just gonna clean up this base a little bit. Okay, so what I did was I got all those little BBs off and I got all the heat marks off, and then I just take my grinder and kind of scuff it up a little bit so that the light reflects really nicely off of it. So now I'm gonna put some anti-spatter spray on here, and because I don't want any BBs from when we're welding to come and land on here. I mean, there's probably gonna be a few that do, but I'll be able to use my chisel and get them off easier. Okay, so I've gone ahead and already put a little mark right here where I want my leaf to be welding on. And I kind of already had a nice little plan for it. So I'm going ahead and mark this one. I'm not going to mark this one because usually if I mark it, when I go to clean this one up first, I'll end up taking it off anyway with my grinder. So we just do it one at a time. See, like those little BBs that just fell? I can brush them off. No big deal. But what I will do now, before I do anything else, find my top, map it out, and make sure it's at the right angle that I want it to be. It's right a little bit too high. So I'm gonna bring it down. Yep, that would be good. with this, I will clean as I go, so that way when I go to put this one on, I won't leave like these little BBs trapped in here. So I'm gonna go ahead, clean this up, make sure that my heat isn't traveling down. Oh, we're good. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up. I'm gonna double check my sunflower head. Actually, we can go up just a little bit more.
This is as loud as it gets.
I think that looks good. So next I'm going to be finding my center on my back. I'm kind of do a rough estimate at first, and I'll move it from there. Not always do I put it dead center. Sometimes I need to adjust it a little bit, just depending on how everything else is looking. Okay. But I think that's good. So we're gonna go, I'm gonna give you a little peek of it. So I need to turn my welder down because now we're going back to 22 gauge, and I do not want to blow through. But I'm going to be welding mostly on my 1/4 inch, and then I'm just going to be flushing my puddle onto the 22 gauge. But first we start with the tech. Make sure my tops, my little mark that I still have there, barely. We'll do our tack and then we'll adjust from there. So now I'm going to look at it from all angles. Before I weld it. But that looks good right there. That turned out really, really good. Barely have any spatter on there. Any little BBs, just a couple tiny ones, but we can work with that. So next we're gonna clean this up, and then we'll get our final look at it. So here it is completed. The customer asked that it just be the color of the metal. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be putting a clear coat on it, but I like to use this hammered clear coat because it just gives it like a little nice little bumpy texture, and it just, to me, it gives me a little bit more of a rustic look, rustic feel to it. So that's what we're gonna do next, and then I'll come in and I'll show you the end result. Okay, so our 2 coats of hammered clear are now dry and it is ready to go. I put my sticker on there just in case anybody else comes across it and they ask who made it, they can easily reference who made it. But I just want to say this piece right here, it's unique in and of itself, but it holds a special place in my heart because anytime somebody asks me to create something for their loved one or in honor of their loved one or to give to a loved one, it just melts my heart and makes my heart so warm that somebody would think of me to create something special so that they can hold on to something, a memory for the rest of their lives. So I hope that this piece right here is perfect for my client and it's everything that she was hoping for. And I hope that every time she looks at it, she thinks of her loved one and is just reminded of all those fantastic memories that she has. And I just want to say, thank you to my customer for reaching out and trusting me, because I know it can't be easy to hand over something as important as remains over to somebody that you don't even know. So it's just been a true honor, and I'm just grateful for every customer that I have.